Hello and welcome to another edition of Trade Talk. I'm a little bit croaky this week, back after a weekend at Gather Round, which was absolutely fantastic. So apologies about the voice, but Daz, good to see you, mate. How was last week?
Yeah, it was terrific. I think, 6 games of footy. I think, apart from the overlap on Sunday where the Collingwood game started as the St Kilda Richmond game was going, I think I read it was possible to attend every single game in Gather Round if you sort of jumped in a car straight away. So what was the experience like? It looks like a fantastic concept.
It's definitely one for the bucket list, not to sound cliche, but I got to 4 games across the weekend. Did Thursday, Friday, and then the doubleheader on Saturday. The doubleheader is magnificent. Obviously, Carlton beat Freo in a thriller, and that was a great game, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But the vibe was incredible. So many people stayed to watch 2 games of football, which is pretty crazy because it's a long game to sit through. But the drinks were flowing in the best way possible. No unruly crowds or anything like that. And I have to say that, I've been to Adelaide Oval before and watched a few games there, but it just has to be one of the greatest places to watch sport in Australia. I absolutely love the experience there, especially when the sun is setting and you can see the planes going over the Oval. It was truly a magical experience, and I think the AFL have really found a bit of a golden marketing tool here to get heaps of people over to Adelaide. For this weekend. It was just magical days.
Yeah, Mount Barker, they played games. Norwood had a couple of games, which is a lovely little ground. The Adelaide Oval, when they did the upgrades 10 or 12 years ago, maintained all of their character. You've got the old scoreboard, which is heritage listed. You can see the cathedral behind it when you've got the setting sun. And I sincerely hope that whatever they do with the Adelaide Oval, they never get rid of the hill and that view. It's a magnificent place to watch footy and to be involved. And yeah, both of those games on Saturday were amazing. To have a doubleheader, they couldn't really involve the Crows or Port because that would have been chaotic. So obviously to have them play the 2 nights before. And then Geelong Bulldogs, that went down to the wire as well. Also controversy in that game too. But yeah, I think the spectacle's terrific. And I know there's debate around who gets it long-term going forward, but I think Adelaide seems the perfect place.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that, in terms of the crowd and stuff like that, I think if you put 2,000 more people into that stadium, if it's at capacity, the surroundings just can't handle it. I think the lines were long just because there's an overflow of people. So, probably something that could be an improvement. But speaking of improvements, you spoke about potentially whether it stays in Adelaide or there's news that the AFL want to really bank in on this and extend it to 3 weekends, Gather Round in 3 different states. What do you think of that, Daz?
Yeah, that might appease. I know they started the season this year in New South Wales and Queensland, whether that was appeasing the fact that they didn't rotate Gather Round and a way of helping out those markets. You've obviously got to throw Perth into the mix as well. Melbourne doesn't really need it given the festival nature every week with 5 or 6 games. So yeah, I think it is a terrific concept, the way you get everybody together. You had all clubs at open days at the Adelaide Oval where you had Hawthorn fans getting jumpers signed by St Kilda and Essendon players and all of that sort of stuff, and just having that big carnival type atmosphere is terrific.
It's the only weekend where I'll accept someone going to a game and wearing another team's jumper.
Yeah, 100%.
Just in terms of a funny improvement that I think would help elevate the weekend to the next step and potentially encourage more people to get over to the ground is, I think, the doubleheader was magical, and I reckon you could turn it into a triple header. You probably can't do that with current AFL teams because they want to spread the games out across Adelaide, get some games to Norwood, and obviously Adelaide Hills, Mount Barker, which is so beautiful. But my suggestion is across that weekend, they should have a state league VFL competition, because I think the beauty about Gather Round is you've got people coming from Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, WA. And while they are supporting their own team, they could potentially support their state team in potentially warm-up games before those games. So I would love to see merchandise, the big V jumpers going around, and it gives everyone an opportunity to look at the state league players and potentially for the mid-season draft in the middle of the year, some of these players could get picked up. What do you think about that, Daz?
Yeah, well, I think the VFL played the Sandful by chance, but as a standalone fixture, I think it needed to be, as you say, part of a triple header, so people going to an AFL game can also take this spectacle in, whether they do Vic Country versus South Australia in the under-18s as well, and do all of that type of thing. So, yeah, it allows that parochial nature of it. I mean, there's always some criticism, and some people have suggested that Adelaide and Port automatically get one more game in their home state. And to me, there's a debate around fixturing that never gets... No one on one side ever concedes that the other side of the argument actually exists. So, as a side note on that, so if you look at Western Australian teams and South Australian teams, they always sit there and say, quite rightly, we travel more than Victorian teams, so therefore we're at a constant disadvantage. But my theory on that would be that if you're West Coast, Fremantle, Adelaide or Port, you have a genuine home ground advantage 10 times a year. If you're Essendon or the Western Bulldogs, you might have a genuine home ground advantage 4 times in a year. So do you want to travel more and have more home games, or do you want more neutral games? And I think that's the debate, which is better of those two scenarios.
It's interesting, and I'd like to hold the debate at that. That's why I think Adelaide should just keep it. That's it. Let's keep a good thing while we've got it. Adelaide are doing a fantastic job with it, and AFL are pouring money into it. And yeah, that's why it's so successful as well. Let's go over our just game highlights, talk about a couple of games. We'll start on Melbourne and Adelaide. Are the Crows cooked? That's the subject line. I think they certainly could be, but I think Melbourne really played them badly. Badly in terms of, really got on top of the Crows. The Crows just were absolutely no match for them. I thought there was a lot of mistakes. I thought their ball movement was a bit boring. And I just want to say that I have a massive man crush on Judd McVie. He is he's going to be a genuine superstar. He reminds me of Luke Hodge. I know a lot of people were saying they call him Silk after Sean Burgoyne, but yeah, I think he's got a lot of Luke Hodge about him. Just the way he leads and he intercepts the ball, and he's got a beautiful kick, does. Yeah,
you've got to find one every year, and the D's have been top 4 for a while, but you've got to keep rejuvenating with someone coming in, and they've been able to do that. I mean, Ben Brown had a very quiet night Thursday, but he's helped their forward line a lot as well. And that's probably where the Crows have broken down. That we came into the year thinking that they're one of the highest scoring sides in the comp, as they were last year. But they've really struggled to hit the scoreboard. They kicked 4 last week against Fremantle, low score again this week, kicked 8 in round 1 against the Gold Coast. I think they kicked 11 against Geelong in their second game. And when you combine that with the fact that their midfield probably doesn't have, say, the polish of Melbourne or a team like that, if they're not hitting the scoreboard either, then yeah, it's getting away from them quickly. They've got Carlton away this week, so staring down the barrel of 0-5, and you don't recover from that in terms of finals. I mean, they can still finish the year well and get on a bit of a run, but if they don't beat Carlton this week, then you can put a line through finals for sure.
Yep, so they have had the biggest probability change in terms of making finals. They're down 19%. They drifted from $3 out to $7.40, and I think it's 8 now, which...
Well, at the start of the year, they were $1.60 to make the 8, and you compared that, they were very short. I mean, Geelong were $2, Essendon and St Kilda at 3s, Fremantle $3.50, Gold Coast $2.70. Adelaide were $1.60. They were considerably shorter than all of those sides. And I mean, we thought it was prohibitive at the time, but didn't expect them to be out of it now.
Well, I think we both laid Adelaide for the top 8, and some of our colleagues disagreed, which is quite funny. But yeah, happy we were on the right side of that ledger. Let's talk about the Blues and the Dockers. It was a controversial finish, but look, I think it was a thrilling finish in the end. I saw the game, and I wasn't worried about the descent at the time. I was high-fiving at the game with my good mate James Safaris, and yeah, he's a Carlton supporter as well, so we had a good time there. But what did you think of the finish?
I say controversial in the sense that the game probably deserves to finish differently to that. It doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong. I mean, clearly the ball was touched, we know that, but I mean, they're going to miss situations like that. That's not the end of the world. It's hard to pick up those sorts of things. I mean, the ball looks like it's deflected off someone's shoulder, and they probably should see it. But to then, it's not so much that, but then to obviously have the double goal brought about by dissent, which may or may not be the right decision. It's just an ugly way to finish a game, really. I mean, Fremantle went from being half a chance from a centre bounce with a minute to go to having the game completely gone. They played better than that, Fremantle, and I think the talking point is the decision rather than the fact that they have actually turned the corner and look to be a pretty good side. So they were unlucky with one decision. The other one, maybe not so much. But look, the amount of goals that would be kicked from balls that are marginally touched, there'd be a lot of them a weekend. I mean, in defence of Fremantle, I think the umpires should have seen that one, but it's not the first time they haven't.
I also agree. That's football. That's the game. I think people can get in the lay bin if they want a captain's call or just we've got to stop stopping the game. Just let it go. Yep, you're not going to have all of them go on your side, but as a supporter, you're probably going to have a lot go on your side. And I think Fremantle had 5 or 6 goals directly from free kicks. Some of them were there, obviously holding the balls and the like, and some of them weren't there. That's footy. You can't complain about umpires. They do a good job. I think it's just part of the game. Let's talk about the Cats and the Dogs just finally before we move on. What were your thoughts there? I think the Cats had a pretty good hold on the Dogs for most of the game. Another one that I went to. Yeah,
good standard game. The Dogs had a flurry late where they came from, say, 20 points down to get within a kick at the end and, was some chance of pinching it. I think Liberatore got hands on the ball through the middle of the ground just as the siren sounded when they were about to break forward again. The Bulldogs, he was amazing in that game, 35 and probably 15 clearances or something. But Geelong, they talk about 9 lives of Cats. Geelong, they've come back again. I think at the end of last year, we thought, it's the end of a magnificent era. Finally, they might spend a little bit of time down in the bottom 6 and rejuvenate, but they're undefeated through the first month. They've got a stack of home games in the back end of the year, and you'd be stunned if they missed the finals, and they'd certainly be a chance to push even higher than that. So, they are the Cats, just the ultimate professionals, never die.
Yeah, interesting. With the Cats, it was a good game of footy. Looking forward to seeing what the Cats do in the next few weeks. I think it will, definitely define how the end of the season looks. I'm not 100% sold on them. I think they're still a hold for me. But a good game nevertheless. Let's talk about the Brownlow medal. So much is happening in this market, Daz. And before we go on with our Brownlow medal predictor to see who's leading the Brownlow up until this point, there's been some big firms. Isaac Heaney is now the Brownlow medal favourite, which is huge news. He had another big game on the weekend, but he wasn't the biggest firmer in the Brownlow market. The biggest firmer was actually Connor Rosie, where he had a price of $27 that was taken at the start of the round into $14, which is a 3% probability change, just in front of Christian Petrarca, who was 20 into 12. And then next was Isaac Heaney, who went 860 into an out 680, and I think just recently into the 5. So some really, really big moves there in the Brownlow medal market. But what's our Brownlow predictor saying up until this point, Daz?
Yeah, Rosie was that dominant that, if he doesn't get 3 votes on Brownlow night, they should almost abandon the medal. I would think going forward he was that good. I mean, he had 20 and kicked 3 goals in the first half against Essendon and kept that rolling afterwards. So Isaac Heaney predicted to get 2.5, but it does make him the leader. It's obviously a decent chance for a 3-vote game there, 27 touches in a tighter game than we thought. Sydney winning that by 26 points, I think, against the Eagles. So he's now a vote and a half clear of Tom Green, who's edged from 8 out to 10s. I still think he's pretty good value at the doubles. Petrarca still at 11s despite a likely 3-vote game. Connor Rosie, say, firming ins, 14.50 he is now. Then you look at his teammate, Zach Butters will probably get a vote or go close to getting a vote in that game as well. And then you obviously saw firsthand, is Patrick Cripps any chance of snagging anything in that game? Brayshaw was terrific for Fremantle.
And Patrick Cripps is an interesting one because I was thinking that he's probably no chance to snag a vote. But, we know what happened to Lachie Neale last year where he had that sort of half game. And I think a lot of the most crucial goals in that game came off of Paddy Cripps' hand to someone bursting out of a pack. I know he was on all hands and knees before giving that ball out to Zach Williams, who then kicked it to Charlie Curnow. And that was the kick that got Carlton within a couple of points of Fremantle, which is, some of those moments really matter in the eyes of the umpires. But any interesting ones there for you? I'm kind of shocked that Marcus Bontempelli hasn't moved more in the Brownlow market. I think he started around $11, drifted to 14, now back to 11. He's predicted to have votes in 3 of the 4 games he's played this year. We know he can get as short as $2. He did last year, and he's just so silky. He's known to everyone as the best player in the competition. So I'm a little bit surprised that after probably potentially a 3-vote game on the weekend. I know it says only 1.5 here predicted by Joel Cashman, but he could have 3 votes. I think he should be a lot shorter than $11.
This is what happened with Lachie Neale last year, where if you go through the predictor, he had a lot of 2.5, 1.5, 0.5, those sorts of things, where in a 2.5 game he gets 3, and in a 0.5 game he might get 2. So if Bontempelli, if those games end up being 3, 2 and 2, then he's 2 votes further advanced, probably a little bit shorter, and that's how you pinch votes on Brownlow night. And he's a proven vote getter. He led the Brownlow very late last year as well, and was right in the frame. So yeah, he's an eye-catching player, and a lot of the Bulldogs' success hinges on what he does. So yeah, I think I'd almost always have him in single figures for the Brownlow unless he's injured for mine, Marcus Bontempelli.
I think that's absolutely spot on, Daz. Let's talk about buy, hold and sell. That's what we're going to go to before we do a bit of a preview of the upcoming round. Who are you buying this week, Daz?
I am buying this week D's top 4 for mine. Only if you look at the value and the odds around it, they're still about $1.80. Now, I'd argue Melbourne are either the best team or the second best team in the competition if you line them up with, say, the Giants, who are flying along at the moment. So D's only loss came against Sydney in round 1 with a last quarter fade out, and they were a little bit undermanned in the forward line of that game. You compare that to Geelong, who were about $1.50 to finish top 4. Melbourne $1.80 to finish top 4. So Sydney are going okay, Carlton are going okay, but the Giants are probably the only side that I would say could mount an argument against Melbourne for best side in the competition. So I still think $1.80 is pretty good value for top 4 on Melbourne.
Yeah, interesting, Daz. All right, well, I'm going to buy Marcus Bontempelli. I think I spoke about it before. He's just in ripping form. He's predicted to have 3 vote games out of 4, which is very good. And he got to $2 last year when Nick Dacos got injured. That's a significant price you have to think about in the Brownlow medal. It means that punters will go for him after a couple of 3 vote games. And I can see him actually being the Brownlow medal favourite for a lot of the year. So if you're getting $11 right now, it's a really good trading opportunity there. I've definitely had a couple of dollars on. So Marcus Bontempelli, for me, he's the best player in the competition. Is, you know, to get $11 on the best player is I think it's a great price.
Yeah, and the only other one on the Brownlow would be just because he started the year well, and 2 years in a row he finished top 3 in the Brownlow, then hit his shoulder in consecutive years. I mean, Jack Steele is 50s at the moment for the Brownlow, which means that if you looked at it each way at the end of the year, you'd get 17s or something on him. I'm not saying he'd win the Brownlow, but I think towards the end of the year, top 3, top 5, that type of stuff might come into play for him.
100%. Who are you holding on this week?
It'll sound contradictory, so I'll try to explain it properly, but the Giants for the minor premiership. So as I said, I think if they're not the best side in the comp, they're probably level with Melbourne, but they are quite a bit shorter than everybody else. So they're 375 minor premiership, no one else under 550. They're 570 for the flag, no one else under 7. So I think it's just a little bit tighter than that. So I wouldn't touch it at that price, even though they're clearly a very good chance of doing so. I just think maybe the Giants have broken further clear of the market than they should have.
Nice, Daz. Well, I'm holding on Isaac Heaney because he is so short for the medal, and I think when a couple of more players come back, a little bit more of the season goes on, he's obviously can be subject to injury sometimes, so there's a little bit of risk around him, and at 580 I think he's getting really short. That's not to say that he couldn't have another 3 vote game. He's playing magnificently in Shorten again. I'd probably look at laying him if he gets any shorter. But right now at the 5s, it's a little bit too much. So, that's my hold, and I'll go straight over to a sell. I think I'm going to sell Matt Rowell in the Brownlow medal because he's probably as short as I think he will get to, only because I think Tuke Miller and Noah Anderson are more prominent Brownlow types. He's going to be in and under, and he's going to be playing some good football, obviously, for the rest of the year. We know that he starts seasons really well. When fitness fatigue comes into it, potentially some niggles, we could see his form drop away. He's very, very short. I think the one to actually look at is Noah Anderson, $65 on the exchange, had a ripping game on the weekend. He's going to get 3 votes. I think if he has another 3 vote type game, we're going to see his odds get to sub 20 pretty quickly. So I'm going to sell Matt Rowell. And just on your points on the Cats, really quickly, top 4. yeah, I'm going to sell them as well. I think they're too short for the top 4 for the reasons that you said before.
On those two players, so Matt Rowell probably falling into the trap this week of playing well in a game where he won't get votes. Like, he looked pretty good, but the Giants had some star performers on there, so it might change his market even though he won't get votes, which can be deceptive. And Sydney don't play this week, so Isaac Heaney shouldn't shorten, which means that if you were looking to hold and maybe bet later, the odds are only going to probably improve if someone has a blinder this week, like if Patrick Cripps gets 3 against against Adelaide rather, then all of a sudden you'll get a better price on Heaney.
All right. Well, geez, that was a ripping buy, hold and sell. A few things that you've said that I'm going to have a really good look at. D's top 4, definitely. I think there's value there, especially if you're trading. We're going to have a quick look at some of the games this weekend. Any that stand out to you? Obviously, the Thursday night game is the D's versus the Lions at the MCG. What do you think of the Lions? They're 13th on the ladder. D's currently 2nd.
Lions last year in this corresponding fixture a bit later in the season led Melbourne by 25 points with 12 minutes to go. Got beaten by a point pretty much after the siren. Jake Melksham, who won't be playing, kicked the winning goal there. Brisbane, they beat up on young Kangaroos, did what they needed to do, found a bit of confidence, their percentage and, a lot of run from their key players, but this is clearly another challenge, but they need to make a statement. Obviously, they've had a slippery start to the year. I'm not sure that I'd be backing them to do so. I still think Melbourne are going better than them, but if Brisbane want to get things back on track, they've got to find a way to win a game like this one and just say to everybody, hey, we just beat another top 4 side, we beat another contender, we're still here. I'm just not sure that'll happen this week.
Fascinating game, Port Adelaide versus the Dockers. What do you think about that one?
Freo, pretty impressive. Their structure was very good against Carlton. They got the game played the way they wanted, which it's funny. I thought in defeat maybe their reputation was almost enhanced a little bit on what they've done in the first few weeks, but still in Adelaide this week against Port. Port favoured to win. We'll see how Fremantle stack up in that.
$1.35 currently on the corporates. You're going to get a little bit better, well, maybe a lot better on Betfair, but I think that's still way too short for Port Adelaide, given Fremantle played a ripping game at Adelaide Oval last week against Carlton, who are one of the best teams in the competition. Port Adelaide defeated Essendon pretty convincingly, but I thought at times they were a little bit scrappy, so I don't think they've fully hit their straps yet. They could, again, but Fremantle in ripping form, and I'm looking at that form there. The last one I just want to talk about quickly is Carlton and Adelaide. Do you see Adelaide bouncing back at all?
Look, it's an even comp, and Carlton, they're winning games but clearly aren't flying. They've got a lot of upside still in them. If they don't find that, then obviously it leaves them a little bit vulnerable. But I just think Adelaide's issues around scoring, Carlton's defence is going pretty well, and Carlton are having no such issues at the other end with their firepower. And their midfield's a fair bit better than the Crows, I think. So I've probably talked myself out of Adelaide being much of a sniff in that on the evidence of the season so far.
But just on price, also, Carlton are very, very short in that game. The Corps have it around $1.27. You're going to get your $1.30s on Betfair, but still very short in that game. And I think I said it a couple of weeks ago. We had a round where there was maybe some likely upsets, and that's exactly what happened. And I can kind of see the same thing for this round. Just going through a couple of the matches here. I mean, we spoke about GWS and St Kilda. Before we've got Melbourne versus Brisbane. Brisbane are currently almost 290 on Betfair. I think that they could definitely win that game at the MCG. I mean, you can't really rule out Brisbane until we really rule them out. Western Bulldogs and Essendon are a really interesting one. Essendon got a bounce back, but they could have some influence back at Marvel Stadium. I'm definitely not ruling out the Saints against GWS at Manuka. I'm definitely not ruling out Adelaide against Carlton. Carlton probably need to get punished at some point for not putting away games a little bit earlier, and they're just winning them on the line. We look at Hawthorn versus Suns. I know that's in the Gold Coast, but Hawthorn are in really good form. Suns are playing well, but it's one of those games that they've usually dropped in the past, and they're currently around that $1.22, $1.27 mark on Betfair. We spoke about Port and Freo. The other one here, I mean, I think the most likely have no upsets happening, obviously Geelong and beating North Melbourne and Richmond beating West Coast. I can't see anything happening there. But yeah, I think there could be some potential upsets this weekend. Which one do you think is the most likely?
Fremantle maybe. Certainly covering the line. I think Port might beat them, but keen to see how they fare in that one, the Dockers. West Coast Richmond, there's a small level of intrigue in that. The Tigers were pretty good on Sunday, but are still undermanned in terms of injuries. They'll get Liam Baker back. The Eagles played okay against Sydney. If they could replicate that on home soil, you never know. You feel like they'll pinch a game somewhere along the way, and that's not their worst opportunity. But you'd be brave to tip them.
Well, we're going to finish up the show now, Daz, but any bets you're having this week?
Still like, even though Brisbane are a chance, I still like the D's at $1.48. Brisbane's record at the MCG is still off-putting, and whilst I think Port might get Freo, I think Freo at the line, it'll be a low-scoring game. They don't concede a lot, Fremantle, so you'll probably get 18, 20-point line or something in that, so I think they're a chance to cover.
I'm going to be backing Marcus Bontempelli in the Brownlow. $11.50, $11 I think is still value. Hopefully he has another big game on the weekend, and I think he should go into single figures. The other one is Noah Anderson. His price hasn't moved really at all. Still around the $65, $60 mark on Betfair. I'm not sure whether you can get one of the corporate prices up for Noah Anderson just now to have a chat about, but obviously the prices on Betfair are so much better than the corporates, and I think Noah Anderson is no exception there.
Yeah, he's 41s on a couple of the corporates, 55 you'll get for him. In fact, 65 you'll get for him on Betfair now. So that's 55% better odds. So.
Yeah, so significant uplift there, and I think if you're going to have a $10 bet, you want to win that extra couple of $100 there.
Absolutely.
Or at least have that potentially to trade off later. And then, I'm looking forward to betting into some of the disposal markets this weekend. They're absolutely flying on Betfair at the moment. Have you had a look at any of them?
I've had a look at some of those, and the proposed same-game multis, we had a crack at a couple of those last week. Unfortunately, Clayton Oliver was a little bit down, which cost us a few of those that were in there. But, the same-game multis will often offer you something around a margin and then two players, so maybe a disposal market and a goal kicker market, something along that line. So look forward to those popping up on game day for each of those respective matches. But even Bontempelli, who you mentioned for the Brownlow before, is 11s on Betfair, 9.50, maybe touching 10s on some of the corporates, so still getting better on the Bont.
Hey, what did you have? Was it 20 plus touches for Clayton Oliver? 25,
unfortunately. I think he had 6 at half time.
Well, in his last 10 games, he's only had under 25 touches twice, which is pretty remarkable. That's 80% of the time he's getting 25 plus. So if you're finding value there on the Betfair exchange, that's where you have to back or lay if it's a little bit too short.
Yep, and look, he's a pretty consistent player, but every now and then they're going to have a downish type game. So, you just have to. The law of averages suggests that you're going to miss the down game, though.
Well, implore everyone, please. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. Like, subscribe, rate us, ask us questions. Happy to, provide any education. What do you want to hear on the show? Anything like that. Daz, we're more than happy to tailor the show to what our audience likes and wants. But until next week, Daz, good luck, and we'll see you next week on Trade Talk.
Looking forward to it.
What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.